Hey everybody, this is Grace. In this video I'm going to talk about, it's kind of an introduction to a story. It's part of a series. It's part of one series and then next combined all together. It's a big series, long one. It's been going on for years. Anyway, this one I'm going to introduce Poppy. Her name is Poppy, and she, at the time that it all began, she was 56 years old. And basically, Poppy is a sociologist, and she lives in Vignettes County, Texas. And that county is kind of isolated a bit from outside county, other cities and towns that are outside of that county. And all around it are farms on the outside, the edges within the county, but on the edges. And they have several towns inside of it. It's called Vignettes County, Texas. Okay, now these are hypothetical fictional stories. So anyway, Poppy is a sociologist. Like I said, at the beginning of this, she was 56 years old. And Poppy had been living in the county, and she, overall, she has enough money, funds. She doesn't have to work. She came from the whole county is wealthy as it is, so she really doesn't have to work. But she, like other people living in it that don't have to work, they still do. They want to be productive members of society. And as a sociologist, she wants to, one of the things she wants to do is she wants a position to open for her and other sociologists within the county. And now she's not talking about for counselors. They already have plenty of counselors. They have counselors. They have therapists. They only, right at the moment, only have one psychiatrist that lives there. And they have, social workers. They have all these in the counties. But they don't have sociologists. Now, she's not a social worker, she's a sociologist. The difference is, you can basically, this would be just, really, the basic thing is sociologists is theory, social workers are practice, but they also have to know what one another does, and so on. And she's done things that taught at the university, and a variety of things, but she wants a position in the, they have like mental health, what started off in 2020, early 2020, they started opening more mental health care facilities, across the county. And she wanted a position, for her and other sociologists to come up in it. But what she got was a strange job offer by one of the sets of the elders. Now, the elders basically run the county, and it's been like that since the county started. The whole first settlers came eons ago, generations ago, many, and the elders basically ran the show, the whole county, and they still do now. But they had recently been, when 2020 started, they were separated, and they were put on these farms that surround the whole county, and basically like a lockdown. Each farm, these are huge. They have huge mansions. They're dude ranches and such, and they had their own healthcare facility. Like I said, the county is wealthy. They had those facilities expanded to meet their needs, and they were basically, the elders were sent to these different farms, okay, in the mansions, and like I said, but she got a job offer, a really odd job offer by the ABC elders. Now, each ranch, when it would come up, it would take on instead of having like usual ranches, the names, they had letters and numbers, okay, like 1, 2, 3, or ABC, and so forth. And this one, it's the ABC, like I said. Okay, I should mention that these are rough drafts. Usually my videos are rough drafts. highlights that I've written, rough drafts. Sometimes it's the whole story, or little excerpts of the story, and it's kind of like I am just talking into, the old-fashioned way of talking into a tape recorder. Instead, I'm using my cell phone and I'm making them into videos. It helps me to organize, and then some things may change later on that doesn't fit the whole story, and I have to tweak it some without notice. These are just like for me, but why not make them videos and put them up? I've been doing it for years, so if they might not flow right, and I'm thinking while I'm talking about these. Sometimes I'm thinking at the same time, multitasking. Is that going to work? Something like that. Is it going to work? Putting it this way, you see, and some things can change. Like I said, it may change. Anyway, to get back to this now, I said she's a sociologist. I'm reading my notes here, and she had been wanting a job to open, and she got this weird job offer from the ABC elders, and the job offer. Now the ABC elders, they basically they decided to take on basically not running, but looking over the radio station, to make sure it has the right funding, it has the right, advertisements. What the radio station is just for the county. Like I said, they're rather isolated, and just for the county, and to have the right things going on. Now, this is nothing unusual. Like I said, people that grew up in that county, they grew up in this. They know this is the score, and they know when they get old enough, they will be part of that too, if they so choose to be. And as part of the elders that run the county. So, and run the things that go in it. They have a lot of benefits. The people that live there, besides being wealthy, it's just they're very healthy, happy people. And anyway, so these wanted to run the radio station. Well, when they were running the radio station, two of them, a married couple, they had been counselors, and before they retired, they weren't that old as it is, and but they had retired, and they had been, they were a married couple. They and they heard this woman. Her name is Sherry. She has a program that is, she's a counselor, and they heard her program and they didn't like it so much. So some of the things, just her ways of being, and so many people were calling in as a talk show host, and she was a talk show host, and people call in, and some of the things that people were calling in and saying were so totally just misinformation about things, that they said, no, this needs to be more structured. We don't want this to go out to the county, this kind of misinformation, and that they would kind of like lead her in a direction which they kind of suspected she was a little bit, or maybe a lot of it, histrionic, her behaviors. And they wanted to get a handle on that. So what they did was basically they decided that all of the counselors, and these type counselors, therapists, and such in the county were going to have some they suspended her, Sherry, for a little bit, and the other ones were going to come in and interview, and basically they were going to have their own shows, or take up some of the time that she would have, and or be on the show with her, all of them, because they needed it during what started in 2020, early 2020, and so there. Okay, the thing I'm finding about doing this as a video is that I have to give, each video is different. It's a new one, and I have to give like a little bit of a recap of some of this, what was going on before. But anyway, okay, so what the ABC elders offered her was that these same counselor therapists that they had been interviewing, they had been letting, have their own little show, a little episode, I guess. What do you call one? A little segment. Trying them out and letting them get used to it. Those ABC elders decided that they would need to write up what they were going to talk about beforehand, and they had to have it approved by the ABC elders before they could air it. And So many of the places do that. But Sherry had been just doing it at the moment. And they did want to cut down on callers, people calling in, because they suspected that there was this one, the bad area of the whole county. They suspected that some of them were doing that on purpose. And they were doing that just to cause problems. That's just what they were. That's the type of people. Not all of them, of course, but many of them, they had that reputation, which is not a good thing to have a town that has a reputation. Not everybody there is that way. That's just stereotyping everybody not good. And but they suspected that it was the bad seeds that were doing this, calling and doing that. And so they wanted, everything to be not pre-recorded, but they weren't going to allow so many callers as they had before. And then instead they wanted to do something a bit different. And that's where Poppy comes in. She's just one of them. They offered this position, okay? And the position was to basically, that these counselors and all, they would be sending in to Poppy and to whichever one that they were given to send it into, told to send it into. They would send in, like email or verbal, like tapes and such, or just however they could do it and she could hear it. Stories. I mean, not stories. What they were going to do was something like a vignette. And something that could be one or it could be like that. And they would send it to her or whomever, and they would, I'm just going to talk about Poppy, okay, before I go today. But they would send her this vignettes, and she would, listen to them. Then her job was to make a story out of them, like a sociologist, with that perspective. And but she would write a story, short story, one that they can read on air. And so at first it was like it was going to be, they weren't sure how that was going to work because it's new for them. And so they had her, do a few, and they paid really well. And she, like I said, she really didn't need so much money, but it paid, and they were they said that they were copyrighted to her. She signed a contract, all that kind of stuff. But Poppy, did that, and it was that way the counselors could read the story that Poppy had written, whichever counselor or counselors, and they would discuss it, the mental health conditions and issues associated with the story. So, but what happened was that after they had been doing this, she would put it, like I said, into story form as for like examples, and shortly after it started, it became like an old-fashioned thing of listening to the radio. I think some places still do that, but listening to it for the story, like an episode in the old-fashioned days on the radio, and then hearing the professionals talk about it, like I just said. It became a series, and with all of the the ones that were sociologists or writers or whomever they had asked to do this, it became a daily thing. Whichever one had it in, and that was part of it. They just did a daily thing. And let me see. I'm reading my notes here. And also with Poppy, hers, they have to come up with names of characters and such. And for Poppy, it was started with the letter V, like in Victor. One of them was Victor. And they just is the way they were. They were into this letters thing. And like I said, before long, these things became hits. And people tuned in, because they wanted to hear these stories, like these little episodes, and then it expanded over time. But she, like I said, vignettes, and then she wrote the stories in sentiment. And sometimes she would write a story and just send a story in. And then they would, the counselors would go over it. Now, of course, she had to know quite a bit. You know, as a sociologist, she knows quite a bit about all aspects, really, of life, you know. And but she needed to focus a lot more on learning a lot more. She had done so in the university, in the graduate school, and but she had to focus a little bit more, because this is what she was doing, was for the mental health professionals to go from there, like I said. Okay. And reading my notes. Okay. And they did this daily, like I said, but it wasn't just hers every day. So, now this was nothing it was pretty much not new to her, because she was one of the original group members, that computer geeks, back when geek was a dirty 4-letter word, you know, and she had been writing her stories since she was in her 20s online. You know, it was different, you know, as through the years. It was starting back in 1990. And so the way they did it was different over years. But it was still writing stories online. And so this was just right up her alley. And she took the job, like I said, and it became, you know, her stories and other people's stories. Like they have one woman, Dawn, who lives in the northern part, Bella, and she is an author, but hers are more about relationships, like, you know, intimate relationships, love, family, along these lines, and so that's what she focuses on. And now with Poppy, they seem to have wanted her to focus a lot more on people who were paranoid or delusional. And their delusions, but not totally. But her storyline developed from the first one she received. And they just continued on from there. And a lot of it, like I said, is people who are a little bit delusional. They were, you know, on the paranoid side and so forth. But she never, as a sociologist, she never diagnosed, but that was left up to the professionals, the other professionals on the behavioral side. So, anyway, like I said, these are just my rough drafts. They're not going to flow like stories always. Sometimes they would. Copyrighted to me, all of it, the whole storyline, everything. And it's hypothetical fictional. Texas, of course, is real, but Victorson County is not. And nothing inside of it is real. So, anyway, I just wanted to get this part out. And like I said, I've been doing these for years, making videos and such, and I've been writing them even longer than that. But it's just an ongoing series, you know, for as long as I feel like doing it. Anyway, wrapping this one up. I'll talk to you on another video. Bye.